What's today's podcast all about? Well, we're visiting with Sangita Kalarickal in Minnesota, listening to her read from her book Mamina and discussing, amongst other things, what influences your writing. Things like culture, emigration, travel, and interaction with other writers. Email me and let me know what influences your writing. My name is Patricia, and this is the Poetry P podcast. Welcome. If you like what you hear or see today, do tell your friends. Subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you have a few coppers to spare, perhaps you could go to Buy Me a Coffee and make a donation or buy a membership with all its perks, all of which support the podcast and keep us creating content for you. Now today, as I said, we're off to Minnesota to meet Dr. Sangita Kalarickal and listen to her read from her book, Mamina. As usual, we don't just stick to the reading. We have a good old chinwag. I hope you enjoy it. Do email me and let me know. Sangita is a wordsmith. Her work has appeared in several journals and anthologies. And the poems in this, her first chapbook, Mamina, range from free verse poetry to haikai form. She's currently an associate editor of Drifting Sands Haibun Journal, and of course, she conducts the podcast Ripples in the Sand. So this is Sangita. Let's get to know her a little better. Sangita Kalarickal, welcome to P Towers and the Poetry P podcast. Today we're going to hear you read from your book, Mamina. But before we do, we're going to hear a little bit about you, if I can tease those things out of you. But just before we go on with that, I would just say there is going to be an author's bio in the show notes, so do go and check it out if I haven't managed to squeeze enough facts out of Sangita. Now, Sangita, I sent you an email, which I think you thought was quite funny. And I said to you, you're a very private person. Discovering you is very difficult. But here's what I know about you. And you could probably tell people why you're laughing and why you thought the email was funny. I know that you are a physicist, you're a doctor, and you work in technology. Would you describe your job as creative?
Yeah, so the reason why I was laughing first was I'm known to be an extrovert, and I get my energy talking to people. So the fact that you don't know, you can't find much about was funny. But I get that. I get that. I am not so much in the public domain as yet, just because it's just been two couple of years that I've started putting myself out there on the social media, etc. So yes, I was in the research group in technology. So I would say that creativity came in very, very naturally. But I do believe that writing poetry or any sort of creative work helps anybody in their non-creative, I'm putting quotes, right? Say technology or, teaching, whatever, any other job, just because it makes you think, it trains you to think outside the box. And it was not just in my role as a researcher that I was, able to tap into my creativity. Even when I was managing a group, I was able to think outside the box, mainly because, the creative stuff is going on in the back of my mind. So I have poetry to thank for helping me do that. Yes. Among other things. Yeah. So
yeah, I'm sure there are lots of influences on you, Sangita. Now, I also think, and I could be wrong, but you live in the Midwest in the USA, in Minnesota.
Yeah,
you don't have the Minnesotan accent, which is almost Canadian, I think, in some ways.
Yes, it's the northern. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. You
But
betcha. That's all I can say.
oh, bless, I didn't know that one. Okay. But I don't think you've always lived there, have you, Sangita?
No,
Where else have you
no.
been?
So I'm an Indian
Hmm.
by birth,
Okay.
and my in my cultural tendencies. So also brought up in Bombay. So most of my life I was in Bombay. I came to the US for a PhD in physics to Colorado, where I lived for a while. And that is my main part in US that I relate to Colorado. And then I came over to Minnesota uh, for a job. So that's how. But Minnesota grows on you somehow, even though it's cold 6 months in a year. It's almost like so our spring comes in around Mother's Day, which is June. So it's really,
No.
yeah, and it's yeah, usually it starts getting cold by November, beginning of November, end of October.
Ooh.
Though this year is different, of course, as we know.
Wow. I'm not sure it's the place for me, as people will know if they listen to me regularly. I'm not one for
Yeah.
cold weather, and I don't like snow. So probably Minnesota I'd need to give a wide berth to, at least during the winter months. But there you go. But so let's talk about the cultural influences on your writing. What
Mhm.
have those been, Sangeeta?
So, as I said, I was my main part in my life, I was in Bombay. And as you know, Bombay is a melting pot of culture.
Mm.
So I was exposed to all kinds of cultures that you can get in India, which in itself is a big melting pot, right? So many religions. Any religion in India, you'd find, I mean, in the world, you'd find in India, and definitely you'll find those in Bombay. And I had lots of friends because I'm an extrovert, so uh, but that also helped me get a very good perspective of differences between cultures. So that was helpful. And then coming to the US, for example, the West, where I was in Colorado, was very different from the Midwest. That's a cultural influence. Then I was able to spend some time in Berlin. So that was, so
Mhm.
yeah. And we absorb culture, right? Wherever we are, we meet people. It's so beautiful to interact with people of different origins and such.
That's very
Yeah.
true. So you were over in almost in my neck of the woods in Berlin.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what were you up to over here?
I was a postdoc at Freie Universität. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay.
So that was great experience, and made a lot of German friends. Uh, just fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Oh, no matter. It's obviously very fresh in your mind because I
Oh yeah.
picked something that I'd really like you to read, Sangeeta. It's from
Yes,
the Haibun
absolutely.
Journal, issue 5.1, if people want to chase it up. Bäckerei und Konditorei.
A short walk from U-Bahnhof is a sex shop with a single mannequin in the window, along with a few bits and bobs. Housed in an unassuming building in a quiet residential neighborhood, the shop sits diagonally across a majestic old church with brickwork that had survived the war. I often think of plopping myself on a chair at a corner to count which building boasts of more people entering it. I wonder which morality strings in my own life I'm struggling to tug. Red light at empty crossroads, long solstice night. Red light at empty crossroads, long solstice night.
When I read this one, I felt, as you've now told us, that you did know a part of Germany, and I did wonder whether it was Berlin. quite well. It's just the phrase you use, I often think of plopping myself on a chair. And I thought, oh, that's the sort of thing you would say if you were very familiar with it. And I wondered, well, maybe what I should say is I had a very strong picture in my mind at that point, because I felt it was Berlin, of you sitting looking at the church, the church that was bombed out. Because I think that's one of the most
On
striking
Klufus
places.
and
Genau, yeah.
Broken Church, yeah.
Yeah. Just sitting there and looking at that, and that's the image that came into my mind. But what were you actually plopping yourself down and looking at? Was it my church or was it a different church?
Well, that is what I wanted to do, plop
Okay.
myself on a chair.
Mm-hmm.
And, because of the contrast in my mind, there is actually probably nothing to, no conflict.
Mm-hmm.
But in my mind, the way I was raised, these two images were complete contrasts. Lord knows why. And, so this is what I wanted to do. I said, oh, I would like to know which one do people go to, how many, more, how many people go to the church versus how many go to it's just in my mind. But then the crux of the matter is I was brought back to figure out what is it in me that makes me want to do that? What is the morality that I'm subject to that makes me want to sit there and do this thing? So I wanted to mention that this was from Berlin in 2006, so way back.
Okay.
Now, I was personally going through a very tough time, personal struggles at that time, which I'm only coming to grips now, that too slowly. All these years, I couldn't even talk about it. But Berlin, with his, it has such beautiful vibes and helped me get started towards healing. And what struck me was how non-judgmental the city was. And it was totally fine. If you enter the sex shop and then you go to the church or the other way around, it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to judge you for that. And that was just awesome for me. And for me, the internal conflict was how I was brought up, versus what the city had to, open my eyes to. That was just amazing for me. So that is what I tried to put forth in this Highborn. I don't know if it came across.
It certainly gives me another reason to go back and reread and rethink about what you're saying here, because with me, I was more concerned with just being in Berlin because it's one of my favorite cities. Absolutely one of my favorite cities.
Yes.
So now I'll go back and really reconsider what you've said. But I'm thinking, I'm taken back to my first day at university, and I went to university in London. And although I am a Londoner, I was struck by something that the provost had said to us when we were all joining for our first day as freshers. He said, London is a very lonely city. And I can see what he means now. And I wonder if you've almost felt the same with Berlin, and that being in such a city, such a big city, where you are, because you are alone at first anyway, you're free to be yourself, the self you want to be, as opposed to the self that you were forced into probably in Bombay with its preconceptions of you. And certainly in my home, an Irish Catholic home, I had certain preconceptions of what I should have been. So even though I was only going up the road to London, I was free to be myself, and the big city allowed me to do that. And I just wondered if Berlin is that part of the healing process, if you like.
Probably. Though I do understand where you're coming from with the big city and loneliness. Uh, you know, Bombay is a very, very big city, probably bigger than Berlin, somewhat like New York. You're walking along the street and it's bustling. There are like thousands of people around you, but you're alone.
Mm-hmm.
You have that, you're carrying just yourself, and probably everybody's so busy, they're not even going to notice. Yeah. So that so I didn't feel so alone in Berlin, though. I know where you're coming from as to one is being alone in a big city gives you a sort of a freedom to yeah, to be yourself. And that is so true. That is so true.
Yeah.
So long as you know what yourself is, right?
Oh,
That's
but I think in
struggle.
my student years, I hadn't got a clue, but it was very nice to just explore what myself might become, as it were. But anyway, we
Right.
didn't expect to go down that road.
Yeah,
Let's go.
no.
let's go. Let's go back to your writing. You actually only started writing Japanese short form around about the middle of 2021,
Yeah.
but you've been published widely. It's you haven't just been published now as a haiku poet, a haijin. You've been writing other things, haven't
Yeah.
you? Tell us a
Yeah.
bit about that.
Oh, yes. I've been writing since I was in fourth grade, when I wrote my first piece, which my family thought was a poem. Of course, it must have been a ridiculous one because I don't think they didn't even keep it. So I don't even know what I wrote. I just remember it was about trees, and they said, "Ooh, poem," and made a big deal out of it. Mm, and then kind of got into writing a lot, creative writing
Mm-hmm.
during my school years and college times and such. So I would be on the college magazine and was the editor for a while, things like that. So yeah, but that's school and college. Sometimes I feel that doesn't count. It does in a way, but I have lots of writing. uh, I have been writing a lot fiction. Magical realism is my preferred genre in fiction, and of course poetry. So free verse is what I was writing, and then I was exposed to haiku. Before, I used to write this 575, ridiculous. Those were, I mean, I read them now and I'm like, I want to tear them up into wee bit of pieces of paper and put them somewhere I never see again. But yeah, and it was during the inauguration of Triveni, which is Kala Ramesh's,
Mm-hmm.
great, phenomenal project, I should say. So I was there for the inauguration, and that is where I heard haiku first, real haiku, blown away,
Mm-hmm.
blown away. And that's when I slowly started writing haiku.
I think there is room for 575 haiku, but they're so difficult to write because they can sound so forced. And I started like you writing 575, and I look back at them and I think, oh, I wish I couldn't see these, take them away from me. But I'm just thinking, sitting here listening to you and thinking, maybe I should go back and actually write the words I would have liked to write if I hadn't thought I had to write 575. So you know what?
Right.
When we finish here today, I'm going to get that older journal out and not worry, not be really embarrassed about the horrendous pieces of work I did, but just have a look and see if they can be redeemed. But maybe redeemed is a bit harsh. If they can be better pieces of work in a more contemporary style, shall we say?
Yeah. That's a great idea. I'll go ahead and do that too.
Yay!
With my horrid stuff. No, so I feel that 575 is so much of a filler. We tend to put in a lot of filler syllables
Yeah.
in that is the problem. Otherwise, 575 should as well work. Why not, right?
Yeah, you're right. It's the filling. It's the filling we do, and maybe choosing the word because it's got enough syllables as opposed to being the word that we want, and sticking in an adjective that we don't really need because we need to fill the 575. Anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about your book, Mamina. And I want to start by reading a part of a review by Vidya Shankar. And she wrote, Mamina, Ama, Mother, Mai, Ma, Ami, Matha. Not sure I pronounced all those right. The emotion, the same world over. So now, would it be fair to say, Sangita, that the theme of this book is motherhood?
Yes, you got that right. So Mamina is Slovak cutification of mama or mother. I don't know if cutification is a legal word, but there you go. So my husband is Slovak. And and when I was there visiting family there, and kids would call their mom Mamina, Mamina, I thought that was the cutest word. And I said, okay, my child should call me Mamina. Of course, she never did, but that's another story. But yes, so Mamina is about motherhood, but not just, it starts off with not just being about a mother and a child, but also about other mothers in our lives, like grandmother, like aunts, who've taken care of us, and people like that. And then I go through, these days, me included, we had a tough time having a baby. And I know a lot of my friends do too. I mean, it's almost like it's a thing at these times to have a lot of troubles having a baby. So it wreaks havoc on women. I feel, women's mind. So there's a little bit, I haven't delved deeper into that aspect in this small chapbook yet, but I have a teaser in that, and then I go straight into my experiences as a mother, watching my kid grow the first couple of years.
Do you think you might go back at some stage when it's not so fresh and write something deeper about that experience?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I do have a lot of poems, but they all need to come together. And, writing a book is a little bit different from writing just individual poems, because they have to be strung together nicely. So I'm waiting for that string to come through.
Take your time. There's no hurry. I know exactly what you mean. Now, this might be a good place to have our first reading from your book. And the point I wanted to make, and this one illustrates it, is it's not just haiku senryu. You've got haibun in here as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I'd like to say a little bit about that.
Yes, please.
I find that haiku poets or haikus or haijin, they are a very elitist group.
How dare you?
I mean, I find so a lot of the free verse poets are like, oh gosh, maybe we can't enter that circle just because, and there are not many. I mean, this is the truth. There are not so many haiku or haibun in literary magazines like free verse. It's starting to change now, slowly. But this is one of the things that I wanted to do, is to bring together everything. Just the theme is important and not the form for this chapbook. And I have a little story that after I put together this work, I was very nervous about doing this thing, because not sure if form is important or not. Is it a no to mix up? So I talked to Sean O'Connor, And I said, oh, look, this is the problem. And he said, he had a look through the manuscript, he read it, and he said, absolutely, you need to just go ahead with it.
Mm-hmm.
No second thoughts. I would stop worrying about the form and so on,
Okay.
he said. And that gave me the impetus to go ahead. Yeah. He was so encouraging.
He is one of our leading experts when all said and done. But I have a theory, and people are going to get sick of hearing about my theory at the end of this year, by the end of this year. But I have a theory that you don't see enough work, sort of, English language Japanese short form work in, should we call it mainstream? I don't like the term, but it's it sort of works. We don't see enough of it there because we as writers of the form don't take ourselves seriously enough. And you say we could debate the importance of form all day long. I think form is important at the beginning of your writing career, and I've been told off for being a snob about this, but I think when you're learning the form, whether it's haibun, whether it's tanka, senryu, haiku, you need to learn the form and how it's written. When you're familiar with that, then you can change, you can change what you do, and we're going to see something of that, I think, in your reading today. But what my point is, if we do not take ourselves seriously, if we do not learn our form properly, then how can we expect other people to understand when we write it?
Agreed.
So, but anyway, we will discuss that a little bit more maybe going forward. Let's start with definitions, shall we?
Definitions. Her niece was her first baby. Young, as yet unmarried, she was most excited with her sister's child, the doll that nature gave her. She bathed and dressed an excited 5-year-old chatterbox, neatly tamed thick curls into 2 braids, wove stories to feed healthy meals to a hungry kid, sang songs to lull tired eyes to sleep. Who said that the making of a mother is a privilege of the womb? Rice and sardine ball, an airplane landing in the mouth. Rice and sardine ball, an airplane landing in the mouth.
I love that last image in the poem there. Whether you're an aunt, a mother, a grandmother, parent of any kind, male, female, whatever, you know where that one's coming from for sure. Yeah. Now we're going to start in on the form already, because there's a debate about tense in haibun, and in this instance you've come down on the side of using the past tense, and I wanted to know why. Tell me, why did you do that? What was your decision process?
I know people like to stick in the present tense, and most times it works, and it's very, it's very forceful. Present tense, I feel. Now I have written this one in both. I had written it in both, and when reading it out, and I just felt that this one looked good to me, sounded better, I should say. And I wish I had a more technical answer for you, but no, I wrote this in both, and this one sounded better to me. That's all. Do you think it would have worked better in present tense?
Oh, I'd have to find it. I'd have to hear it in the present tense. But what makes me happy to hear is that you wrote both, you considered both, and as we said in the previous, after the previous reading, you knew what you were doing. It was a conscious decision about this. And I think that's the important thing. So I'm happy either way if it was a considered piece of work. So we're going to get into haiku next.
Dia de los Muertos. I towel bun damp hair, grandma style. Dia de los Muertos. I towel bun damp hair, grandma style.
Now, it's that people can see I have short hair, Sangita. What is towel bun damp hair? I towel bun damp hair dry.
So,
How do you do this?
so this is very Indian.
Okay.
What you do is you will have, if you have damp hair after washing your hair, just don't go out because you have hair water dripping off your hair. So you take your towel and wrap it around and put a bun.
Oh,
At the
okay.
back. I have seen a lot of people do that.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's kind of where I went. My grandma used to do that, of course. So yeah.
Actually, my daughter, who has very long hair, does that, but I'd never really put it into words.
I didn't know how to call it that. This is what I came
No,
up with.
it makes perfect sense. Absolute perfect sense.
Yeah.
Now we've already noticed that you've gone to a different language for the title of this book,
Yes.
and now you've gone to Spanish. So, and we've been to Germany. So, what's the connection with Spain, with the Spanish in this one?
No real connection other than the second language. It is the second language in the US, of course. But here, more than the language, I am actually referring to the religious. I don't know if it is religious or not. Probably it's a cultural festival.
Yeah.
The Day of the Dead. Mm-hmm. That's it. Literally translates as the Day of the Dead, right? And in Mexico, what they do is that they would have very nice, beautiful shrines to people that have passed from their family, and they would make dishes that were their favorite dishes and stuff like that. And so basically what you're doing is you're celebrating the lives of those who have passed and how it affects you. And I find that really comforting. And that is the festival that I was referring to. Now, we have very similar stuff in India, where we do respect our, think of our elders. It's during a particular period right now, probably this is the period of during fall, Pitru Paksh, and, you do all this. But there is no such thing where you sit and reminisce about the people that have passed and do something which connects you to them. And that's the stuff that I was missing. And it's very sad that all I could do was towel bun damp hair.
Not at all.
So,
not at all. It was
where
your
I was
connection.
going.
No,
Yeah.
We have something similar. I don't know if it's still. I'm not religious anymore, but I was brought up Catholic, and we have All Souls Day, which is sort of like that. But again, I don't ever remember sitting around having a spit and a chat, as my family would say, about the dead or cooking their favorite meals for to link ourselves with. So that's lovely. But I was really interested, and we're not going to hear the poems or the pieces that I'm referring to, but this poem, if I remember rightly, comes between a poem of remembrance to your grandmother and a poem about a woman who has given birth, and I don't think the birth went terribly well, just from the poem. So I wondered, why did you put this poem where it is between those two?
Okay. So the poem after this particular one, the Olivia Motas, is about the mother of us all, Mother Earth. And that is where I go, the birth didn't gone okay, but not really. I mean, we're pretty much being very cruel to our mother in that way. So the haiku leads into the poem where I say, all I can do is towel bun my hair, right? So similarly, this is the state of Earth we have right now, and what are we doing? Or, not much, can't do much. I mean, I tend to think a lot more I should probably stop that. And maybe it doesn't come through in my poems just yet. So I apologize for that. But it is a metaphorical response to what we are doing for Earth.
No, I don't think you need to worry. I mean, I know other pieces of work outside this book, and I think your thoughtfulness comes through. You really don't have a problem with putting that across, I don't think. So thank you for that. So should we have the next piece, Speech of Shapes?
Sure. Speech of Shapes. Your eyes dart from shape to recognizable shape. Butterflies in treetops, daddy, apples, teddy. Deep shades of hazel stare into the azure of the midday dome. Learning, relearning, words and connections, fast, so fast. The bald eagle swoops, a splash in stillness. The bald eagle swoops, a splash in stillness.
Now, I think we've entered the realm of your own motherhood. Well, I feel like we've entered the realm of your own motherhood in this one. But to be honest with you, when I read it, it takes me right back to when my kids were small, and a very recognizable era in their childhood when, they picking up ideas, and almost it's so exciting to watch them. They'll look at one thing and then something else will take their attention, all over the place, and it's just absolutely wonderful. And it, as I say, it really brought back the joy of watching my own kids in their early childhood. So thank you for that.
Thank you. No, thank you for.
Now we're going to talk about form again, because you've done something else. Would you like to tell? Because I will put the poems in slide form in the show notes, and I think it comes through in the reading. But perhaps, Sangita, you could explain, what have you done with this haibun?
Don't call this a haibun to Sean, please. He will.
Yeah. That was going to be another question. Would you call it a haibun, or how would you describe it?
I'm still a little bit traditionalist, so I would not call this a haibun.
Okay.
But it is a legitimate form. The way the prose came to me was in this form.
Okay.
This is how it spilled out. And this is like not too much editing. So this is how it came. The poem, I would call this just a poem. So the prose part came in like a free verse. And then there had to be something after fast, so fast, which gave it that punch and that closing bow, as you will. I had to bring in the image of the bald eagle swooping down for its midday meal. It's so I wouldn't call this a haibun. It's just a poem. But yeah, people have started doing that in the realm of haibun these days. Or maybe they've always been doing that, probably. Have a prose in form of a free verse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not yet seen any villanelle or anything else.
Oh, let's hope Sean's not listening to us. Now, Sangita, the next three pieces superbly illustrate what Caitlin Jans, I'm not sure of the pronunciation again, said in her review of your book. And I'm going to paraphrase here. She essentially says that this wonderful chapbook is grounded in the joys of becoming and then being a mother. So perhaps you could read them to us, and I won't interrupt you while you do that.
So I will read the three pieces, 2 haibun and 1 haiku.
Yeah.
Zipping along a curve. And this was published in Drifting Sands Haibun in January 2022. She starts crawling a bit later than babies in the family. Apprehension at familial competition melting and guffaws bubbling out from our throats, we watch her move. Crawling is probably an exaggeration. Little paces with one knee and one foot. Somewhat strange, perhaps, but it gets the work done. She's all over the place and a little underfoot. Propelling herself a few paces in a hurry, she hears our laughter and stops. Eyes twinkling, she glances at us and then continues rushing on towards nowhere in particular. She gets there. She gets there fast. Rain puddles under tiger lilies, mud in her toenails. Rain puddles under tiger lilies, mud in her toenails. Tailwind. Children are sponges. They watch everything, learn from everyone, and absorb all. And then, with an infinite lack of inhibition, they add their imagination. We who have left our childhood lanes long behind stand on the sidelines and watch them soar. Mama, look, airplane is mowing the sky. Contrails. Mama, look, airplanes is mowing the sky. Contrails. My daughter and I harvest marigold seeds. Summer dreams. My daughter and I harvest marigold seeds. Summer dreams.
Thank you, Sangita. And
Thank you.
you're the
Thank you.
first one, zipping along a curve. It really made me laugh because I could understand, crawling a bit later than the babies in the family. Oh, nightmare. I have to tell you, my eldest son never did crawl. Went
Oh,
straight from sitting on his bottom to walking.
oh,
No in
wow.
between. No in between. And thankfully he went early, I think relatively early into the walking stage. But it's because my father, who was so joyous at having this first grandchild, he would spend most of his life in my house, basically, with my son. And thank goodness that he did. He had that time with him. And anytime my son wanted to go anywhere, he'd just go like that with his arms, and my dad would
Pick me
pick him
up.
up. So consequently, he never did crawl. But there you go.
He didn't need to, right?
He didn't need to, and no worries because he now runs marathons, so it's not didn't hold
See,
him
there you
back.
go.
But there you go. Well, I mean, sadly, we're nearly finished. And Sangita, you've written these when I hear you read them, when I read them myself, you've written them from a mother's perspective mostly. But I think, as I said before, any parent, grandparent, and as you mentioned, aunt, uncle, will nod their head knowingly when they read these. And the experiences are going to remind them, as they did me, of the joy of having or being around this small child. And I hope, like me, when they've read the book, they'll put it down with a smile on their face, Sangita. It's lovely.
Thank you.
Now, we're not quite finished. This might be a good time, though, for you to tell me, where do you get the book? Where can people buy the book?
So this book is available on Amazon in the US as well as in India. And with this, however, anybody elsewhere, if they want a copy of this book, please write to me. I will make sure that you get one. So I can give you my email ID to put in the show notes, maybe.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be great. And so all the details on how to get hold of the book will be in the show notes, including how to get hold of Sangita. But before I let you go, Sangita, could you please read a piece that we published in the Poetry P Journal 123?
Thank you so much for publishing that. That was one of my favorite the still dark lake I extend into another me. The still dark lake I extend into another me.
And it struck me, I mean, I loved it when I read it anyway, but obviously, or we wouldn't have published it. But having read the book, it made me think again. And I wondered, does this poem reflect what motherhood brought to your life? Or the struggle for motherhood, maybe?
In a way, yes. But the second and the third line only has a slant reference to motherhood and my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
It is actually an extended metaphor to us, to what my past is. You go through dark times,
Mm-hmm.
but you need that stillness. If you don't have the stillness, you cannot see yourself. And
Yeah.
that is where I was going with this. It does, in my case, it does, imply my journey to motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
May not in a lot of people's cases, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It struck me on first reading when it first came into my life about going through dark times and the stillness. But as I said, when I read the book, I wondered, and then listening to you, I wondered if it had anything to do with motherhood. Well, that's it. Very sadly, don't forget, go and have a look at Sangita's author's bio and the details on how to get the book on the show notes. Sangita, thank you so much for spending time with me today and giving us a snapshot into the work in your book, Mamina.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Patricia, for having me here and letting me get on my soapbox and talk about certain things and also highlighting my book. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, now, that was a real pleasure for me to record for you. I hope you enjoyed it too. There are lots of details in the show notes this time. Do go to the website and check them out. And of course, let me know what you think. I can't do a better job for you if you don't feedback. And do please leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Help me to spread the joy of our poetry form. And I have one more thing to ask of you. Our dear editor, Lorraine Padden, is leaving us in May. And I wondered which one of you would like to fill her shoes. Maybe there are a number of you. Anyway, if you think you'd like more details, email me. We'd love a new addition to our editing team, even though we're going to be really sad to say goodbye to Lorraine. So next time, I'm going to have more of your original poetry to read to you. Do join me. But of course, until then, keep writing. And if by some chance, and we all know there's a fair chance, I've left something out of the show notes, do get back to me by email and I'll sort it out for you. Ciao.